Hello, and welcome to the Warfighter Wire, your weekly update on all things Department of Defense. I am your host, and we are covering the pivotal week of July 27th to August 2nd, 2025. This wasn't just any week at the Pentagon. We saw a series of strategically massive events that would signal a fundamental shift in how the DoD does business. The main headlines? First, the award of enormous long-term enterprise contracts that will reshape the defense industrial base for decades to come. Second, the long-discussed pivot to the Pacific is no longer just a phrase. It's a tangible movement of troops and advanced hardware. And finally, the Senate confirmed key military leaders, ending periods of uncertainty and providing clear direction for the services. We are going to break down what this means for the taxpayer and for the warfighter on the ground. Let's get right into our DoD-wide roundup. The big story this week is money, specifically how the Pentagon is spending it. We are seeing a clear shift away from traditional, fragmented contracting and toward massive, long-term enterprise-level partnerships with key industry players. The strategy is to lock in industrial capacity, stabilize supply chains, and get capabilities to the warfighter faster, even if it means less competition on individual orders. Two contract awards perfectly illustrate the new franchise approach. First, on August 1st, the Defense Logistics Agency, or DLA, awarded RTX Corporation, formerly Raytheon, a monumental 20-year umbrella contract with a ceiling of $50 billion. This sole source agreement creates a framework for the entire DoD to procure RTX systems, spare parts, and services all the way through to July 2045. This ensures long-term stability for critical systems like the Patriot air and missile defense system. Just a day later, news broke that the U.S. Army awarded Palantir Technologies an enterprise agreement with a ceiling of $10 billion over 10 years. This deal consolidates 75 existing contracts into a single framework for the Army to procure Palantir's AI and data analytics software. The goal is to accelerate the delivery of platforms like Army Vantage and Titan, eliminate reseller fees, and use volume discounts to maximize the Army's buying power. This solidifies Palantir's roles as a core partner in the Army's digital transformation. Beyond these enterprise deals, a flurry of multi-billion-dollar contracts for precision munitions highlights an urgent effort to rebuild stockpiles, many of which have been drawn down to support Ukraine and to equip U.S. forces and allies for potential high-end conflict. On July 31st, the Air Force awarded Lockheed Martin $4.288 billion contract for more Joint Air-to-Surface Standoff Missiles, or JASSMs, and the Long-Range Anti-Ship Missile, or LRASM. This deal includes significant sales to key allies like Poland, the Netherlands, Japan, and Finland. On the same day, the Air Force awarded RTX a $3.5 billion contract for the Advanced Medium Range Air-to-Air Missile, better known as the AMRAAM. This will supply the Air Force, the Navy, and a broad coalition of partners including Ukraine, Taiwan, Japan, and the United Kingdom. And on July 28th, the Missile Defense Agency awarded Lockheed Martin $2.06 billion contract modification for Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, or THAAD, interceptors. This award will support America's layered missile defense capabilities and run through December 2029. On the policy front, the Department of Defense has formally initiated a comprehensive review of the AUKUS trilateral security partnership between Australia, the United Kingdom, and the United States. A policy statement released on July 29th noted the review's purpose is to ensure the defense pact aligns with the Trump administration's America First strategic approach. This introduces a level of uncertainty for two of America's closest allies, as AUKUS is built on deep technological integration, most notably the sharing of sensitive nuclear submarine propulsion technology. A re-evaluation could lead to new demands on industrial work share or technology transfer controls. The result of this review, expected in the fall, will be a critical indicator of the administration's approach to alliances. Meanwhile, the Golden Dome Missile Defense Initiative remains a top priority. This program, established by a January 27, 2025 executive order, aims to develop and deploy a shield to defend the U.S. from a full spectrum of aerial attacks. In diplomatic news, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth held a key phone call with his Republic of Korea counterpart on July 30th to coordinate defense posture on the Korean Peninsula. That same day, the DoD hosted the U.S.-Saudi Strategic Joint Planning Committee to continue security cooperation with a key Middle East partner. Finally, the department launched several high-profile initiatives aimed at improving the quality of life for service members. The Permanent Change of Station, or PCS, Joint Task Force launched a 24/7 hotline to assist service members and their families with move-related issues. This is a direct response to the persistent complaints about the stress of the PCS process and is seen as a strategic tool for improving retention and force readiness. And in a symbolic move, a ceremony was held on July 28th to officially rename the major Army installation in Texas to Fort Hood, honoring World War I hero Colonel Robert Benjamin Hood. This marks a significant step in a multi-year DoD-wide effort to rename installations that previously honored figures of the Confederacy. For the Air Force, the focus this week was on mastering combat in the Pacific and modernizing nuclear deterrent. The service is all in on Resolute Force Pacific 25 or REFORPAC 25, which began on July 10th and is being called the largest and most comprehensive Pacific air exercise ever held. The entire point of this massive exercise is to operationalize the doctrine of Agile Combat Deployment, or ACE. ACE is a critical concept for the future of conflict in the Pacific. It involves moving away from large, centralized, vulnerable air bases to using a network of smaller, dispersed, and often austere locations to launch and sustain air power. This makes it much harder for an adversary to target and neutralize U.S. air capabilities. The sheer scale of REFORPAC 25 shows that ACE is moving from a concept to a practical, theater-wide reality, with Air Mobility Command playing a crucial role in providing the logistics backbone to make it all work. While practicing for a future fight, the Air Force also hit a critical milestone in modernizing the nation's nuclear triad. On July 29th, the service and its partner Northrop Grumman announced the successful full-scale qualification test of the Stage 2 solid rocket motor for the LGM-35A Sentinel intercontinental ballistic missile. The Sentinel program is the multi-decade effort to replace the aging Minuteman III ICBM fleet, and this successful test is a vital step in ensuring the reliability of the ground-based leg of America's strategic deterrent for the decades to come. The nation's newest service, the U.S. Space Force, also had a big week, securing new leadership and making major strides in building a more resilient space architecture. First, the Senate confirmed Lieutenant General Sean Bratton to be the new Vice Chief of Space Operations and receive his 4th star. His confirmation fills a key leadership position and provides stability for the service's continued development. On the technology side, the Space Systems Command is moving fast to build a next-generation satellite communications network. On July 29th, it awarded positions on a potential $4 billion contract for the Protected Tactical Satellite Communications Global, or PTSG, program to 5 companies: Astranis, Boeing, Intelsat, Northrop Grumman, and Viasat. This approach, mixing established defense giants with commercial innovators, is a deliberate strategy to create a diversified hybrid architecture. The idea is to enhance resilience by distributing capabilities across multiple systems, making the network much harder for an adversary to attack. The Space Force also announced a major sensor upgrade on July 31st that significantly enhances the ability to identify and track objects in orbit. This capability, known as Space Domain Awareness, is foundational to all space operations and to defending U.S. and allied assets from threats. And the service is actively modernizing the operating system for the Global Positioning System, ensuring the security and reliability of the GPS constellation, a critical utility for billions of military and civilian users, remains a paramount mission. The Army's focus this week was squarely on the Indo-Pacific, taking a critical step to strengthen the shield in the region. The big news was the deployment of the brand new Lower-Tier Air and Missile Defense Sensor, or LTAMDS, to Guam. Army Secretary Dan Driscoll was on the island around July 27th to inspect the newly arrived system and visit Task Force Talon, the unit that will operate it. Developed by Raytheon, the LTAMDS is a cornerstone of the Pentagon strategy for a layered defense of Guam, a critical strategic hub for U.S. operations. The LTAMDS is a generational leap over the legacy Patriot radars, offering a full 360-degree view to detect and track multiple threats simultaneously from any direction. It will be integrated with the THAAD system that has been on the island since 2013, creating a much more resilient multi-tiered defense. This deployment is also a prime example of the Army's new transformation in contact doctrine. Instead of spending years testing a new system in the US, the Army is deliberately placing prototypes into a real-world operational environment. This higher risk, higher reward strategy is designed to accelerate the refinement of the technology and, just as importantly, the tactics and procedures by getting direct feedback from soldiers using it at the tip of the spear. While new hardware was being deployed, Army units were also engaged in major training exercises. In Australia, soldiers from the U.S. Army Reserve's 143rd Sustainment Command participated in the large-scale Talisman Sabre exercise, gaining experience in managing complex logistics in a multinational environment. And back home, the Alabama Army National Guard conducted Operation Patriot Press, a multi-state convoy operation to test the unit's ability to execute the long-haul logistic missions that are critical for sustaining operations. Turning to the seas, the U.S. Navy saw key leadership stabilized and kicked off one of its largest global exercises. On August 1st, the U.S. Senate unanimously confirmed Admiral Darrell Cottle as the 34th Chief of Naval Operations. His confirmation is a huge deal, as it fills a critical leadership post that had been vacant for nearly 6 months, all while the Navy was conducting sustainment combat operations in places like the Red Sea. Admiral Cottle's confirmation provides immediate stability. During his confirmation hearing, he emphasized improving the quality of life for sailors and addressing the rising threats from drones. With leadership locked in, the Navy kicked off Large-Scale Exercise 2025, or LSE 2025, officially commencing on July 29th. This event involves sailors and Marines from 6 component commands and 7 U.S. fleets, operating across 22 time zones. LSE 2025 is the premier live global test of the Navy's core warfighting concepts like distributed maritime operations, which is central to fighting across the vast distances of the Indo-Pacific. The Navy also continued to bolster its posture in the Pacific. The Virginia-class fast attack submarine USS Indiana officially changed its home port to Joint Base Pearl Harbor-Hickman, adding to the undersea warfare capability in the region. And the Ohio-class guided missile submarine USS Ohio conducted a scheduled port visit in Brisbane, Australia, demonstrating the forward presence and reach of the submarine force. In a move to support sailors on deployment, the amphibious assault ship USS Iwo Jima held a ribbon-cutting ceremony on July 28th to open the first-ever USO afloat recharge centers on an amphibious vessel, providing a dedicated space for relaxation and connection for deployed sailors and Marines. From the sea to the shore, the Marine Corps demonstrated its role as the nation's premier crisis response force this week. On July 26th, 4 MV-22B Ospreys from Marine Rotational Force Darwin deployed over 1,950 nautical miles from Australia to Clark Air Base in the Philippines. This wasn't a training drill. It was a rapid response to a request from the Philippine government for urgent life-saving support to communities devastated by recent typhoons. Shifting directly from exercises to a real-world humanitarian mission showcases the readiness and flexibility of forward-postured Marine forces. In a tribute to the deep ties between the Marine Corps and the community of Guam, the government of Guam held a ceremony on July 28th to rename a major highway as the Brigadier General Ben Blas Memorial Highway. The highway honors the late Marine Brigadier General Vincent Ben Blas, a Guam native and the first Chamorro to become a general officer in the U.S. Armed Forces. And on the administrative side, the Corps released MAR Admin 353/25 on July 28th, authorizing the promotion of hundreds of officers for August 2025 and providing the projected list for September, a critical function for managing the force. Finally, we'll look at the operations here at home and the cutting-edge technology being developed for tomorrow. In Homeland Operations, U.S. Northern Command continues its mission to provide military support to Customs and Border Protection along the southern border. And with the National Interagency Fire Center setting the national preparedness level at 3, the DoD is postured to support civilian agencies battling wildfires. As of August 2nd, 37 large fires were burning uncontained across the lower 48. In a remarkable example of military tech helping a domestic crisis, uncrewed helicopters equipped with autonomy software from DARPA's Elias program were used to drop thousands of gallons of water on fires in Texas. This brings us to DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, which is pushing the frontiers of technology. On July 31st, DARPA announced a formal partnership with the state of Texas to use autonomous systems to fight wildfires, directly leveraging the Aircrew Labor in Cockpit Automation System or Elias program. This flexible autonomy kit was developed for military aircraft to reduce pilot workload, and now it's being transitioned for civilian use, providing a direct return on investment for taxpayers and a powerful demonstration of the dual use potential of defense research. Looking to the future, DARPA is also seeking innovative ideas for new programs, including the NODES program, which deals with biotechnologies, and the ambitious RADS to Watts program, which seeks to develop novel ways to convert nuclear radiation directly into electricity. Success here could lead to an extreme, long-lived power sources for unattended sensors in remote domains like deep space or the sea floor. So what's the big picture this week? The events from July 27th to August 2nd paint a portrait of a Department of Defense operating with a clear sense of urgency and strategic direction. We see a monumental reinvestment in the American defense industrial base with a new procurement model that prioritizes speed and stability to prepare for an era of sustained competition. We see the pivot to the Pacific becoming a concrete reality with advanced radars, submarines, and massive exercises demonstrating a decisive focus of resources and strategic attention on the region. And all of this is happening alongside a renewed focus on stabilizing leadership and taking care of the all-volunteer force, recognizing that readiness depends on the well-being of service members and their families. Looking ahead, the outcome of the AUKUS review will be a major indicator of the administration's foreign policy, and the lessons learned from the massive Pacific exercises will directly shape future budgets and war plans. This week laid out the strategic, industrial, and operational foundation that will define the U.S. military's posture for the next decade. That is all the time we have for this week. Thank you for joining us on the Warfighter Wire. We'll see you next time.